there has to be some type of diversification plan, whether that is getting into another industry or starting to film other types of events or films and things like this. You have to have some type of idea of what you're going to be doing after shooting weddings. And maybe you've got an amazing business and you want to manage it and market it, and you can hire shooters and editors and whatever. That's amazing. You should definitely do that and stay in the industry. But there has to be some type of vision for the future.
I'ma get right in my bag. Why you gonna try to get mad? Everybody wanna keep up. Don't you know I move too fast? I'ma zip right past. Drip all on my swag.
Hey guys, welcome to the Wedding Film School show. Today, my co-host is Bobby Burns. I am Jason McCutcheon. How you doing, Bobby?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing awesome.
Sweet.
How's your week been as like a wedding filmmaker who's currently in hibernation?
Yeah, pretty good actually. I think we were maybe talking about this a little bit before, but like I feel like inquiries are for sure up. Like I'm responding to so many emails, if nothing else, and I've had a handful of meetings in the last, week, 2 weeks, something like that. I've still got my live stream / client meeting set up, just killing it for me, and had a couple bookings in the last week too. So pretty cool.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, I think we said it on the Facebook group, but you should join the Wedding Film School group.
Yes,
and
do it.
Hang out with us. But Jared said, I think we had our record booking month in February, and then we broke the record in March. And I don't know if we're on pace to beat it again in April, but like it's been crazy.
At this point, who cares?
Well, it's
might not be able to.
No, that's true. But it's interesting because you look in it seems like the industry is in like a weird place because you see some people are like, I'm not getting any inquiries. And I wonder if it's like geographical or how that is.
It could be. I know like for us, so I'm in the Midwest, I'm in Minnesota or in Minneapolis, and I know like we've had some, maybe not the strictest restrictions, but, among that level. And so, even people who rescheduled from last year, everybody rescheduled into the fall just to give themselves as much time as possible. So like my wedding season this year is really light in the summer. I have like 2 in May, and then I don't think I have another wedding until September, except I just booked one in August. So I think that's the thing is now people know restrictions are loosening up here, but do they have enough time to plan a wedding in the summer?
Here's what I'll tell everybody is now is the time to invest in advertising. If you are, and this is free, this is not the topic of our show today, but now is the time. While the iron is hot, you should be advertising a little bit if you're not getting the bookings and the leads that you want and you're not established. Because people are starting, there are people who are going to go, I need to book a wedding last minute, and they're going to need to find someone quick and find someone.
And 2022... It's going to be crazy.
It's going to be crazy. Yep. Anyway, today's show is going to be doubly brought to us by NoBackLog. We have an awesome promotion for you guys. If you're a first-time customer of NoBackLog and you go ahead and enter our code WFS10, and you can get 10% off your first job, which is really cool. But speaking of NoBackLog, we got friend of the channel, moderator, family member at Wedding Film School on the show. We got Jason Battista. How you doing? Good,
guys. How you doing?
Good. So how you been? You've been kind of in a hole the last couple months, just grinding this out. How has everything been over at Wedding? Or sorry, let me say it again. You've been really busy last couple months, kind of just grinding it out with NoBackLog. You guys must be really, really experiencing all these weddings just slamming at once, right, over there?
Yeah, it's been pretty intense. So NoBackLog's an outsourcing company for wedding professionals, photographers and videographers. And it's been a crazy 2020 and start to 2021. We just did 3 months worth of sales in 1 month in March. So that's an indication of how busy everyone is in the Australian market, in the US market. We've got customers all over the world. So I think there is a lot of people busy at the moment and booking a lot of work for 2021.
That's nuts. So outsourcing is something we always recommend at Wedding Film School. We love it. But in general, I think ultimately there's a time and a place to outsource. We've talked about it. What are not to make it this big commercial, but if somebody's considering outsourcing, what's the number one reasons why someone should really think about it and take it really seriously if they never have before?
Yeah, so I jump on a lot of calls with people that have been running a business, their wedding film business, for whether it's a year or 5 years, and like the reasons are generally different. So, but there's a theme to them. So either it's people that have a massive backlog that all of a sudden just crept up on them and they are struggling to keep up. So they've got 10 weddings, they thought they were going to get it done, but life just got in the way. And so all of a sudden they need some help. So we're there to, work with them through that and get them back on track again. Then there's other people that reach out to us that know they've got a busy season coming up. So in a couple of months' time, for the next year, for example, they might know that they're flat out and they just don't have the capacity to keep up with that amount of work. So they'll reach out to us and start organising, what their workflow will look like for the next, 3 to 12 months. And so we'll work with them through planning that all out and just assign editors on our team to work with that studio and smash out their workflow with them and make sure that we're meeting all their style guidelines, and everything else that's important to that studio goes into our system. And we work through them in a collaborative relationship with lots of communication.
You run NoBackLog now, but you're not just a person who runs an editing company. You were a wedding filmmaker at one point. Am I right?
Yeah, so I shot my first wedding when I was 15 years old, and I'm 34 in a couple of days. So I've been doing it a fair while, but I did other things throughout that time as well. So I went to uni, I had a 9-to-5 job for 5 years during that period. And I always just loved filming weddings. I loved the day itself, the event, and I just knew that I wanted to be involved in that industry for a long time. So, I have been. And at a certain point, I started getting a little bit tired of the editing. Like I had a 9-to-5, I had other interests outside of my career. I'd been doing it for a long time. And I knew that although I loved shooting the day, the editing was starting to grind on me and getting a little bit tedious, and I wasn't putting in the effort that I used to put in. So I thought, maybe that I can get some help with editing. And this was like 8 years ago now. So I've been a part of NoBackLog for 6 years. I'm one of 2 directors. There's another Australian director as well. And we've got a team of 40 editors on staff. So it's been growing steadily over the 6 years. We've just been slowly, making new relationships and collaborations with customers from all around the world. And it's a pretty big operation now. So running that is a full-time job.
That's awesome. So, okay, I'm curious because I know one of the things, I guess we haven't really talked about it that much, Jay, but, I think one of the things that we've talked between us, maybe not so much on the show, is like diversification. And I see this as like a really clear-cut example of that. Like you were a wedding filmmaker, Jason, doing it. I don't remember I didn't do the math on the years that you just laid out, but 6 years ago, you kind of choose to diversify a little bit and get into NoBackLog as a director or as part of that, not just a user. And I think that's something really cool for wedding filmmakers. Like I know I try to diversify outside of weddings, both as a filmmaker and just income streams like beyond that too, that aren't even in the like filming world. Can you speak maybe a little bit to like, so it sounds like 6 years ago is when you kind of chose to diversify a little bit, but also maybe like what prompted that?
I think it's interesting, the demographic in our industry. Photographers is a little bit more diverse maybe, but video, there seems to be a pretty specific demographic. So, I put this question to the community. How many wedding videographers do you know that are over 45, 50, over that sort of age range? It is definitely, I don't know why, but it has become, or it is, as an industry, sort of a young person's game. Like people get into it, 20, 25, and they might stay in and, be really busy until 35, 45. But after that, it seems like something happens that people leave.
It could be called their knees going out.
Yeah, whether it's health or just having enough of couples or whatever. But I think, wedding days are crazy intense, right? Especially as filmmakers, I think we have one of the craziest jobs on a wedding day.
Definitely.
And your body just wears out, right? So you sort of have to think about diversification of your business. If you're not doing that, you're in serious risk of being stuck in, however many years it is for you, and you just you don't have the energy to go to weddings and put the effort in that you used to put in. So there has to be some type of diversification plan, whether that is getting into another industry or starting to film other types of events or films and things like this. You have to have some type of idea of what you're going to be doing after shooting weddings. And maybe you've got an amazing business and you want to manage it and market it, and you can hire shooters and editors and whatever. That's amazing. You should definitely do that and stay in the industry. But there has to be some type of vision for the future.
Yeah, I actually find that really interesting. I know this is probably not really the topic of this podcast today, but it is true. I mean, I think it's true, and I'd be curious to know your guys' thoughts. But I think most wedding filmmaking businesses are unique, and not every single one, but a lot are unique in that there really is no exit plan with them, and I think that can leave you pretty vulnerable.
And I was going to say, just to jump on both of your points, a lot of people. Honestly, this might be one of the big reasons why someone wants to look at outsourcing, because I think one of the things I see with wedding filmmakers is this solopreneur pride that I do everything. That is what makes it my product, is that I do everything. And we're one of the few industries where the person making it would also do everything. The marketing, the sales, every single aspect of the business that you do. And so I think changing that, I always say depersonalizing your work and your brand so that it's not simply about in leadership, there's a thing called irreplaceable person syndrome, where an organization cannot function without one person in it. And they even have a thing called key man insurance in your insurance for your business, where it's the essential person leaves, you get money because they're so important. And I think a lot of people are their own irreplaceable person in their business. There's it wouldn't work at all without them. And I think for some people that's okay, because you can build up a pile of money, you can build up a reputation, you can build up contacts, and you can move away from that wedding brand and do something else. You totally can. But you got to know, if you're running your business, totally solopreneur, no plan for a studio, that you need to be building that next thing at the same time. We just did a thing, it hasn't been released yet, but a podcast, and we talk about long-term planning for a wedding filmmaking business. And the thing we say is, do today what you want to happen tomorrow. So invest today in the thing you want to happen tomorrow, whether it be saving money to start a business. I mean, think of it this way. Wedding filmmaking companies are ridiculously profitable. The actual cost to run the business versus how much you can make is maybe not as much as photographers who they could buy a camera 10 years ago and shoot a whole career.
If you look at the overhead costs of some of the reception venues and ceremony venues, these places have hundreds of thousands of dollars in loans for their venues, and they might be charging, whatever, 10 to 30 grand for a night, but that's including food and, dozens of staff, and there's a lot that goes into
their
that, right?
Insurance
We are
is
quite
crazy.
lean businesses.
Yeah.
Insurance, all these things, right? We're very lean businesses as these solo entrepreneurs, as you say, yeah.
Yep, we really can. And so I think it's really smart where, look for other things you're passionate about. See what you're actually building with your business. If you're building a bunch of contacts that are, everyone needs video. You better learn actually how to do production, by the way, because wedding filmmaking is not production. So you better understand how to do lighting. You better understand how to quote a commercial job. Whatever it is, though, you have to have that plan to build into that next thing. And it doesn't have to be weddings. But I think it's interesting, okay, what is next for me? And it's cool that you did that, Jason. I'm definitely fascinated into, clearly this isn't, a hard fork. You're doing editing mostly for weddings, probably. But it's interesting that you were was that a hard transition for you as an artist to be I know, or were you just no, I'm over it?
Look, it's always hard for for most filmmakers to let go of some part of what they do, right? Whether it's to have an assistant on the day, you're sort of over their shoulder a lot until you learn yourself out of that habit. Whether it's outsourcing editing or getting help with your accounting or your marketing, we're all quite protective of our businesses and our art and our craft, right? And that's fine. but to build and to grow and to lead, you have to sort of train yourself out of those ways of thinking, those principles, and be willing to try a different way. You know, if you've been in your business a long time, maybe there is a different way to make life easier, to make your business more profitable, to grow it. So there's just all these ways that you can enhance and grow what you're already doing without changing the fundamentals. And I think that's should be the goal of most people in the industry, to can be continually looking forward into their business in a couple of years' time. And yeah, as you say, see where they want to be and what am I doing now to get there.
I mean,
I think-
Bobby, I'm curious for both of you guys.
Yeah.
Do you think a person can be exactly where they want to be as a wedding filmmaker and never be willing to outsource anything? I'm not just editing, forgetting about NoBackLog, just in general, the concept of like something has to go, something has to give, right? I mean, am I wrong?
Yeah,
there?
I mean, I think that you can maybe you can be to where you want to be and be doing everything, but that shouldn't be where you want to be. Like the issue in that scenario is probably where you've set that bar of where you want to be. I can speak like very, like genuinely to, you know, Jay, you mentioned, you know, somebody who doesn't want to give up stuff and doesn't want to let hold of that creative freedom. And what's good about my company is that I am involved in every single aspect. And, you know, I've always been decent as time went on, and I needed it about outsourcing things like a CPA and stuff like that. But on the creative side, I was very against it until a couple of years ago. And I had that exact mindset. And that's the mindset that, you know, not everybody, but the majority of our industry has. And, you know, in finding editors to work with, you know, one of those being NoBackLog. NoBackLog was somebody that I originally started, you know, testing the waters with among somebody local and some other people as well. I have just come to that conclusion that I was so wrong. And I would like super encourage anybody who is hesitant. Like, yeah, there's going to be some work to get things where you want it to be and to get editors that understand, you know, what your unique fingerprint is on a film. And I still do touch every film. Like, I do most of the colors still. I'll swap out shots in nearly every edit. But having somebody on board who's quite frankly just a better editor than me, you know, and can do stuff faster and take stuff off my plate and allow me to make more money and do the stuff that I think I excel at, which is shooting and, you know, client like relationship and stuff that. I mean,
you're doing a new venture right now. I don't know if you're talking about it. I think you are because it's not on social. But like, you know, you have a venture you're doing now. You couldn't reliably do that if you did everything.
Exactly. Like if nothing else, and honestly, this is what it really started as, was like, I just did not have enough time in my life. So even if it doesn't translate to me booking more weddings necessarily, or doing commercial work, or opening, like I'm opening this gym and co-working space concept or whatever, like just like being able to have reprieve in my life. And part of that I think comes from like, look, I'm a grinder for sure. And like, I work so hard still, but like, especially in the early years of my company.
Which is,
and
I think, by the way, important. Like,
oh yeah,
there's no replacing that grind.
And I think you should do everything at some point to understand how it works and how it affects your business. But at a certain point, you just get to this point where you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm spending so much time on my business, and I also want to like enjoy my life, and that's totally okay too.
Jason, can I ask you? This is just a question I've had in my mind as with outsourcing and stuff. My personal opinion is that I don't really think you should be outsourcing your videos till you can edit them pretty well yourself, because I think, like you said, that person needs to have some idea of the vision of your company. But the more I think about it, I'm like, I wonder if there's a place for someone who can't edit at all, who just is a great shooter, who outsources their video. Do you see any of that?
There's a little bit of that. It's rare. They actually are quite... they might have just started in the industry, right? So editing is quite daunting to them. So we have some clients come to us, not have a preference on editing software, not have a preference on style or, you know, technical details of the edit.
Or they go like,
they
make it
just
like
say, "Go
sculpting
for
with
it."
time, and they send you that video.
Yeah, they send you some sample that's like, well, is your work going to look like that?
Yeah. Well, I will say one thing, just interject, and we can cut this in here wherever you want. I do want to clarify my statement of that, like, I think most people can be outsourcing, but not everybody. Like, you talk about sculpting with time or something like that, like, there are people who need to be doing their own edits.
I think there is something, and it doesn't have to be editing, but everyone this was my original real point. There's something in your business, if not many things, that you should be outsourcing. It doesn't mean, I don't know what it is for you. Maybe editing is your calling card and it's not editing.
Yeah, maybe you're outsourcing your shooting. Or maybe you're doing both those things and you're outsourcing everything.
All your sales.
Yeah.
Who knows? Like your branding, your social media, hire a social media company. Who knows?
Yep.
Like you need, at some point, it's going to be like, these are the 2 things I make money on. And then these are the 5 things I do that I'm a freaking liability on, that I'm actually costing us money because I'm doing them so mediocre and I'm barely getting it done.
I think people really need to really, really dig in deep on what sets them apart from their competitors. And a lot of people are going to say, oh, it's the way I edit or the way I shoot. And like, there can be a little bit of that. Like, I know when I look at the people that, are in my market or just wedding films in general, like I use a lot more negative space traditionally. I use really, really, like I don't use slow motion, but I use slow intentional movement, like really slow intentional movement, all done in camera. And like all that stuff is really small. And most clients probably aren't even going to realize that. But I think a lot of people aren't honest with what really sets them apart. And, I think like for me, a lot of that is like my client experience. And it doesn't mean that somebody else can't give a client experience as well. That's great. But I think it's just the relationship that
Nobody
build.
can do the Bobby Burns.
I mean, it's pretty unique. So, but I guess honestly, like jokes aside, what I'm saying is it's probably not that unique. It's just that I connect person to person with that couple. And that's what they want, is they want somebody who's a friend who they're comfortable with and whatever. Like my edits are not that different. My shooting is not that different. Yeah, there's little stuff, but like I think people aren't honest with themselves when they use that as an excuse to not outsource different parts of their business.
Look, I'm just gonna be completely honest with you. Can we be a little bit transparent here? I'm gonna tell you one of my deepest, darkest secrets. I actually really don't enjoy editing that much. If you were to give me the option between shooting and editing, I would pick shooting 11 times out of 10. And if you've been editing and doing video production for any length of time, you know that dread in your heart as wedding after wedding after wedding keeps on mounting up, piling up on your backlog. It really sucks. I hate it, and I'm sure you do too. So what can you do about it? You can, of course, ignore it. It's not gonna go away. You can hire a video editor to work on staff. Maybe it costs you 50 to 60 grand plus taxes. Or you can simply reach out to our friends at NoBackLog. They make it super easy to knock out edits while you focus on other more important things like growing your business and making more money. And that's what it's all about, right? Save time and money by working with a professional, reliable, and affordable video editing partner. And get your life back today. You can spend more time with your kids, with your spouse, with your important other person, or you can simply just play more video games. I don't care. This is a no judgment zone, man. So make sure you're visiting NoBackLog.com and get started today.
There's a misconception that you can't achieve unique results when you're outsourcing an edit. Yeah. And that's like saying every single film in Hollywood, the director should have edited it. So it's just like, it's just a weird way of looking at what we do, right? So for sure, as Bobby said, expect to jump in and spend an hour or 20 minutes or whatever, swapping out some shots, enhancing the edit, giving feedback to your editor, going through a couple of rounds of revisions with the editor. We assign the same editor to your studio so they work with you consistently, and they do learn, and we have good software and systems for understanding your needs. And so there is refinement, right? But if the outsourced editor is any good and worth what you're paying them, they should be getting you to 80 to 90% on every single project consistently. And then you jump in, and if you've got extremely unique work and a very unique vision for your work generally or for that wedding, then you spend some time and tweak it a little bit, and you'll get those unique results. You don't have to do the entire edit to get a unique result. You can step in towards the end and do that.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to thinking of your business like a brand, and your job is to be a brand leader. Your job is to be as a brand. You're a boss. You're like the boss of your brand. Like in doing everything is not what bosses do, but bosses look over the final product. They make sure it speaks for the brand vision, and they create a coherent brand vision. And so the thing I see a lot is people go, "That's my style. My style is having no style."
Yeah.
And I'm like, you probably should get a vision for your brand. Like it's like in entrepreneurship, they say, "What's your elevator pitch?" And it means like when you get in an elevator with somebody, by the time I go from the first floor to the 10th floor, I should be able to tell you what I'm about. And this is why I think you need to work on your own films for a period of time until you can actually say, this is what I make.
Yeah.
And this is what I am, and this is what my brand is. At that point, it shouldn't matter who does it, because you're the one who made the brand, and you should be able to say to that person, no, that's not us.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, fire them, whatever. There's a lot of people out there. But like at the end of the day, like your brand should have a strong enough vision that it can be translated to anyone. And if it can't be, like if McDonald's or Mercedes-Benz or any of these brands that we're all familiar with couldn't be talked about by anyone but the owner, it would make no money.
And I think that's what, that kind of goes hand in hand with really, like I was saying, digging in deep and finding what sets you apart. But not only what sets you apart, but what is that fingerprint on your films? Like what is maybe not unique to your experience or your films in like a selling aspect, but like why can somebody look at 10 films, 5 of them being yours, and say, oh, these are the 5 that were done by them? Like, is there some common something between them? And then putting words to that and being able to figure that out, because if you can do that, you can work not with any editor, but like any good editor really just needs guidance originally on what is your film? What's the characteristics of that? What are the trademarks of it? So
Can I ask a more of a funny stylistic question, Jason? So if you were to break down modern wedding films into like genres, types of wedding films, like how would you describe like the 5 wedding films you're actually making?
Yeah, it is interesting because there's obviously similarities. It's amazing how many cultures there are in the world, but how wedding films are relatively similarly structured, because weddings are relatively similar across the world. We have such unique cultures, and even within countries, and then every wedding film turns out to be relatively similar. So yeah, in some ways it's difficult, in some ways it's easy, but I would say, there's this upbeat, fun, poppy sort of wedding film that doesn't take itself too seriously and shows all these candid and fun moments that the couple has. And that's a increasing genre, I think. Previously, even a couple of years ago, everyone thought wedding films had to be quite serious and melatonin and like, emotional. But now they've sort of changed to this more fun, upbeat version of the day, which is great to see. A lot of people have that style now. Then there's this sort of more slow and romantic and cinematic style that everyone's familiar with, and we all know, most of us know how to do that type of work. And then you see these other types of wedding films evolving where they're sort of like more artistic and odd, and it's hard to describe why you do like them or maybe why you don't like them. So there's unique suppliers in the industry that are achieving work like that as well, which is, very cool to see coming out of the industry.
I call them, I say there's fun, candid ones, there's schmaltzy, romantic ones, and then there's ones with lots of post zooms.
Yeah.
A lot of effects. Do you think, you mentioned obviously that weddings happen around the world, but you guys obviously at NoBackLog are uniquely, seated to really speak to similarities of weddings across the world, because I know you're editing probably not for just US-based people or whatever, but I find it interesting, not surprising, but interesting that you really do see a lot of the same, requests or finished products, and, obviously styles vary somewhat, but they're all kind of within this same sphere or box. Just like a random question, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on it, but I mean, do you think that is to blame with, basically social media, YouTube, like the access that we have to, like, obviously weddings are very different, traditions are very different across different cultures, but with the films having some similarities, is that, because there are, you think the top wedding filmmakers putting their work out that everybody watches and wants to do something like that, and we just have such a like intertwined and connected community where everybody can see, and it just kind of forms this like overall sphere of what a wedding film needs to fit within.
Yeah, like why is this?
Like why did we end up here?
Why are they the same? Yeah, why are they? I probably think that the modern wedding film, the genesis of the modern wedding film happened at the same time as the genesis of social media and YouTube.
Yeah.
Like it's a totally new style of art. Really, like, and people go, oh, people are making wedding films for 30 years. No, not really. Anyone who made a wedding film, if you tried to make a wedding film like you did 30 years ago, unlike photography, which has some similarities.
Photography goes in ebbs and flows. I mean, that comes back around.
Well, yeah, ultimately,
to some
like,
extent.
you're doing some candid photos and you're doing some portraits, and like they're still doing that.
Tried and true.
Yeah, like wedding films, I think, happened at the same time.
Yeah,
as all this other stuff, and they're inextricably linked. And it's interesting because it's a communally created genre of art across all cultures.
Yeah,
it's like one of the first times where we all, DSLRs are a thing. Oh, they do video. Oh, now we can watch everyone's work at the same time. It's not like there's this guy who's huge in Japan and this guy who's huge in the States. It's like, no, we're all on the internet.
We're all wedding filmmakers.
It's all there. It's all in front of everybody. And everybody also didn't know how to use the cameras. So we're all going to the same places to get educated, which is, of course, YouTube. So I think it's interesting. It's like the art that YouTube made.
Yeah. Well, and it's been progressive, too, in that, like, you look at the length of a wedding film. Obviously, 30 years ago is very long. Like, highlight films, I don't think were really a thing. And then, like I started 15-ish years ago, and I was doing longer highlight films, like 12 to 15 minutes. Now the longest thing I do is 8 minutes, but a lot of what I do is 3.5 minutes. And we're doing a lot of 1 minute or 45-second teasers, and a lot of that has to do with different platforms.
We're just corporate
opening,
schlubs.
Or it's very much in line with what's available to promote on, right? Like,
yep.
10 years ago, Instagram, you could upload a 10-minute film or whatever. I don't know. And now it's
clients,
like a 1-minute reel, a 15-second TikTok. Like,
as a person who I think you achieved success as a wedding filmmaker, you achieved success in a range of businesses outside of wedding filmmaking. So let's just think about filmmakers out there. What would your advice be for the wedding filmmakers that are looking to diversify their own business outside of just shooting and editing their own weddings? And it's not just like, why should they outsource, but like, why should they be considering like, hey, I need to look outside of my normal way of doing things and make sure I'm getting other streams of income?
Look, between 45 and 65, you've got to earn $1 to $2 million to retire. And so what is your plan to earn that money? You got to hustle now, or you got to like continue working beyond 45 up until you're 65 or whatever, right? Unless you make a whole bunch of money in crypto or something. So it's really important that you're you're thinking about these things now, and you're choosing, what do I want to be doing when I'm 35, 45, 55? And it's okay to exit the industry. If you've got something else that you're passionate about and you've always sort of sat on it, if you want to go back and do some study and change profession and become a real estate agent, whatever. But I think it's really healthy to have those things in mind, just ticking along in the back of your mind now, rather than just saying, oh, life's good, everything's fine, I'll be fine. Well, industries have a habit of changing quite quickly on businesses. And we've seen a lot of innovation in our industry where people coming out and filming with the big old shoulder cameras, if they did not adapt to how we're shooting weddings now, they're probably not shooting weddings anymore. So,
but they still come into our
hustling.
Facebook groups from time to time.
Yeah, they still bully new people.
They'll still comment. Yeah. It's about hustling. It's about having a plan. It's about being willing to innovate and change, and recognize that you might not be doing this forever, and that's fine. But what is the plan afterwards?
Yeah.
And it's okay to have a passion and start working on it now, or just really hustle and choose to go all in on this industry and get additional teams and add, shooters and editors and whatever, and grow your business and make the most of what you know now and what you've built and the brand that you have, and develop some wealth in your life now so you can enjoy it later.
I think it really comes down to what is my net income? And the problem I see with people is they don't know what their cost is. So they're just like, oh, I made $100. This is...
I hate like threads or, people educating or whatever. Yeah, I know where you're
make
going with
100K.
this. Yeah,
I
made 100K. And it's like, dude, you received 100K and you spent 60 grand.
Yeah, or you should have spent at least 30 grand. You should not be running a business that doesn't cost you anything. Like, that is a short-term thing. Unless you're going to scam a bunch of people or get that's what, like, you hear all those wedding filmmakers, the Copper Stallion Medias of the world. They're like,
yeah,
it's all profit because I don't do anything.
I don't edit or even show up.
Yeah, most of us, there actually is cost. Even if it doesn't seem like there's cost, it's opportunity cost. Like, you could be doing something else with your time. You could be building. Most of us, if we're smart, though, and I love this, is in wedding filmmaking, if you can get a handle on your cost and get your price to the point where you have enough cushion to actually endure the cost, you can actually start building a nest egg. You can start investing in another business. Heck, you could have bought a bunch of crypto like 3 years ago. But like, if you have money that's there to launch whatever the next thing in your life is, if you have an eye on that, or you're building contacts for the next thing, like, just having tunnel vision and not diversifying is the most foolish business decision you will ever make. And wedding filmmaking chews you up and spits you out at some point. And I'm not saying that to keep you from getting on. I want you to become a wedding filmmaker. If you're listening to this and you're like, I don't want to be, no, just know it is a career. Like, your knees could go out any season and you can't shoot weddings anymore. That could happen to you. Like, you could just suddenly be like, oh, dope, I'm an awesome, cool guy. And everyone's like, you're old. I don't want to work with you. Like,
I think about all those things a lot.
Yeah, they can happen.
Yeah.
So I guess my point is, like, you can go the direction of Jared and I. We have a big studio, and we're working on this channel. We're trying to get into education. I do, of course, have crypto. We have our 401k plan. Like, our business is feeding our future. Or you can go the direction of, like, Jason, who maybe you knew you were going to get out of weddings by doing this. Maybe, did you know when you were like, oh, yeah.
No, so I had studied management and marketing at uni. And then after uni, I loved the fact that I didn't go and get a 9-to-5 job, right? I traveled, I shot weddings, and I did that for years and years and years. So whilst my friends were going off and doing masters or like becoming architects or accountants or whatever, I shot weddings, earned bank, had a great time, and traveled a lot. And then at some point, maybe 4 years after uni, I recognized I got these 2 degrees. If I want to use them, I should use them now. And I actually didn't really recognize at the time that I was using them in my business. So I went and got a 9-to-5 job. I was the marketing manager at a business that was, $10 million turnover. And I learned so much from watching those entrepreneurs operate and grow it from a $10 to $20 million business in the 5 years that I was there. And it was just incredible to be part of something bigger than myself. And at the end of those 5 years, the opportunity with NoBackLog came up. And I'd been shooting weddings the entire time for those 5 years. So I recognized that I loved weddings, loved creative stuff, loved shooting weddings still, and had a passion for helping others in our industry realize that there's light on the other side of the tunnel. You can still, you can get help with your business, and NoBackLog does that. And I got an email this morning with a customer saying, thanks, we're now back on track and we're not scared of the next season coming up, we're going to be fine.
Yeah.
And it's because they recognized that they needed some help and got some help.
So you were never thinking, I'm going to not shoot weddings anymore when you got involved in No Backlog, or was that always the plan?
No, I still want to shoot. I still do shoot. I just bought 2 6s and the
It's
cool
weird,
new
man.
28.
It's so hard to let go of, right?
It's hard to let go of.
That
yeah.
diversity, I mean, that can help you in maintaining a love for weddings in a lot of ways. Like,
That's what I think.
Being able to be more selective, being able to not feel undervalued because you're just throwing out the number that you feel is worth it, and you're only booking weddings that will book you at that price, stuff like that. Like, having that other income stream or place where you're dumping your time into or whatever can be good for that in a lot of ways too.
I just think anytime you're in control of what you do, even if it's not the most profitable thing ever, if it's funny money, who knows? Like, however it's set up, when you have the ability to choose something, it will give you joy.
Yeah.
When you have to do something, it will take your joy away. And I think that's what we're really talking about on this show. Is like, I mean, me personally, I want you to outsource because, we have a relationship with No Backlog. But in reality, I don't really care, I guess. Outsource, don't outsource, whatever. Do what makes you happy with your business. But I do want you to not be a prisoner of your own business.
Definitely.
And I think that's what we talk about a lot on the show and on the channel is like, hey, whatever you're doing, do it because you're choosing to do it because it's making you tons of money. Don't be doing it because you have to do it. And like, this is not a now conversation, by the way. We're kind of coming across like, oh, save your money. And like some people are like, I'm not making any money. So like, listen, I get it. This is not a problem many of you are experiencing. Many of you don't have the money to outsource. You shouldn't be outsourcing yet. Many of you don't have these businesses that could fund your 401k or buy a bunch of crypto or whatever you want to be doing. You're not profitable yet. That will come. Stick with it if you're good. So even if you're hearing this today and you're like, well, I don't know, this doesn't sound that relevant to me, thinking about your future is relevant to you. That's what I'll say. So Jason,
If you're shooting
Yeah,
you're
go
shooting 20 weddings at $3,000 or 40 at $2,000, you need to be making profit in that business. Like, that is a profitable business. Something's going wrong if you're not making, some profit there. So you just got to stick with it and continually raise those prices and continually improve your work and your customer experience and your edit, everything. And you'll definitely get there. There's plenty of opportunity and money flowing through this industry, especially now versus where it was 5 years ago versus where it was 10 years ago. It's a great time to be a wedding filmmaker.
I think in 5 years you'll have about 30% industry growth. I really do. I think you're going to have about
in 1 year from now to 2022, we're going to have like 30% growth.
well, maybe financially, but I think percentages of weddings that will be booking wedding films is going to be 30%. So I think the annual market is going to be much bigger. And that means every segment of the market will be bigger. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. It's a great industry. If you're getting involved now, it's an awesome industry. So Jason, why don't you kind of give us the pitch? Tell us about No Backlog. How can we go? How can people find it? And tell them a little bit about the 10% off offer.
Yeah, so visit NoBackLog.com. Have a look around our website. We have been doing this a long time. We've been working with customers from all across the world for a long time. It's a very close, collaborative relationship. We need to understand you and your business. And so we've built a software platform called Nexus. You can create an account there right now. Sorry?
Very future-y.
Yeah.
Nexus.
It is the future of wedding filmmaking. It's called Nexus. It is a post-production workflow between your studio and our studio. And so everything that happens, all the little bits of communication, everything that we need to do a great job for your edits is within that system. So you can sign up now. Obviously, the system is free. Take a look around and learn more about what we do. Software is absolutely vital for that collaboration. If you're sending emails and jumping on Facebook chat to try and edit a wedding film with an outsourcing company, you are going to have a hard time. There's a lot of data and information and communication that occurs through a single project, let alone 30 or 40 projects. So it's really important that there's a strong software system to make that collaboration easier, because if there isn't, you will spend more time communicating your needs and going through revisions in a really messy way than actually just editing the work yourself. So jump on, have a look at the Nexus system, and you can jump on a phone call with me anytime, chat with our team, and just learn more about what we do.
Tell them about the Wedding Film School offer.
So jump on to Nexus, book your first project, and add the discount code WeddingFilmSchool10, so WFS10. You get an immediate 10% discount on your first project. But we've got other reward programs as well. So you can, on our pricing that we display, there's up to 20% discounts available, 5% by booking in advance, and up to 15% for a rewards program as well. So it's very easy to start earning discounts on our pricing.
Yeah, and it's great. And we, we wouldn't be, again, hopefully you got something out of this podcast besides, we're not trying to run a commercial on the podcast. So we wouldn't be talking to someone who we didn't think offered more value than just being connected to a brand or a company. Because I think what you're doing over there, what you have done personally as a wedding filmmaker, I think is aspirational. I think it's something that people should be seeking to do. Maybe it's not running their own editing studio, but just having something else, or having if your knees go out tomorrow, you still have a job. And I think that's really cool. And I think, of course, the product is good, too. We stand by the product at Wedding Film School. And when we look at NoBackLog, we stand by it. They're friends of the channel, more than friends of the channel, and they're people that we stand by their work. So I would encourage you, go check it out. If you are a wedding filmmaker, I think it would make it. And you guys have added photo now, right?
Yeah, so we've added photo primarily because a lot of filmmakers are doing a bit of photo, or a lot of photographers are starting to do video.
Yep.
And when they find out about NoBackLog and our video services, they're already maybe outsourcing their photo editing. I'll tell you one thing, photographers have been outsourcing their editing a lot longer and in a lot larger quantities than videographers have been doing.
For eternity. Eternity. I don't know a single really big photographer that edits their own photos. That's just how it is. Anyway, I mean, there's differences. There's a lot of differences. So I know it's not apples to apples, but it is interesting. They're just way more willing to do that. But anyway.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, it is a simpler edit. And that's why we've had to build a system like Nexus to handle the degree of complexity that we as filmmakers that shoot weddings expect from our edits. That we expect so much in terms of story, quality, technical things, whatever's important to the couple. We have a unique client each time. And so our systems have adapted a lot over the last 6 years to draw that information from you and put it in an edit that you're going to be surprised at how good it is and how much it matches your style, and then the customer is going to love, especially if you spend an extra half an hour just jumping in and tweaking it a little bit as well.
Well, Jason, thank you so much for being on the Wedding Film School show. We're going to have you back on at some point, just talking shop and all this stuff. Thanks a lot for coming on.
Oh, good. Thanks, guys. Appreciate being here.
Yeah. If you have not subscribed to the channel and you made it this far, that's weird because you've watched like an hour-long video and you haven't subscribed. So my question to you is, why not? Just go ahead. You've already sat with us. Go ahead and subscribe. If you like this content, you're going to like the rest of the stuff we do, like our weekly live stream where we do like film critiques and all that junk, and it's really great. We have a great Facebook group, like we always mention. Go ahead and look in the descriptions. Click down there. We have a lot of stuff you can buy down in the description that really help out the channel. One of them being, of course, NoBackLog, where there's a lot of other stuff down there as well. But thank you so much for being supportive, and we'll see you next time on the Wedding Film School show.